The year is 2012. You are part of an ever-growing but still small community labeled Speedrunning, where people upload their fastest completions of games online. This event named Games Done Quick showcasing these fast times has been taking off steadily, and people are chatting about it on forums that house many people with the same interests, such as Speed Demo's archive. Eventually, you stumble into other like-minded people online, and want to engage in friendly competition with them, but how can you reasonably do that across the internet? The answer was SpeedRunsLive, an essential website for any speedrunner in the early 2010s. It allows you to easily find other speedrunners and compete with them in real time. As the years have gone on though, less and less people mention the site, and I wouldn't be shocked if the site didn't ring a bell to newer casual viewers. So, what happened to SpeedRunsLive? SpeedRunsLive was founded by two people. Daniel Hart, who was both a Zelda speedrunner and a competitive Smash player, and Narcissa Wright, who I will commend for what they have done for Zelda speedrunning, but I don't want to talk much further because I don't feel like discussing and debating the controversy behind the name as a whole. A simple Google search can answer any questions. By early March 2011, we can find a very basic website setup, and within a month or so, establish the SpeedRunsLive that everyone would come to love and know. The core of the site uses the IRC, or Internet Relay Chat, text-based system that was a popular choice for chat messaging. You may even be using it today in one way or another, whether you know it or not. For example, Twitch chat is also based on IRC. Users could sign into the Speedrun's IRC channel that was hosted through Speed Demo's archive, and register for an account that would be tied to any future match a player participated in. Players can create and join individual channels that are made with a specific race goal in a game. An easy example being beat the game in Super Mario Bros. The goal can basically be anything. It could be beating a specific world or level, and there were also some other popular race formats that players did often in the early to mid 2010s. Probably the most notable being Bingo, where runners would get a bingo sheet with different goals. You were able to check off a box once that goal was completed. This format definitely isn't adaptable to every game, but for the games it did work on, it made for an interesting head-to-head format, and I still see people using it today. Besides just being friendly competition among other speedrunners, by 2012, the main front page would feature any speedrunner that was currently live streaming on Twitch, which made it a great directory for finding new runners. This started years before Twitch made proper categories for such things. All you had to do was either put the specific tag SRL in your stream title, or you could also manually toggle the setting yourself. This was a pretty great way to discover new runners, whether it's simply trying to find people similar to you who play the same games, or exploring completely new territory. In 2012 and especially 2013, the site became pretty fleshed out. It had a proper Q&A section from streaming tips and emulation questions, all the way to a global leaderboard that kept track of users' overall race count, wins, and even total time racing as a whole. It didn't take that long for many players to get staggering numbers. It was safe to say the site was a common go-to among any member in the speedrun community. Many well-known faces over the years were on the site towards its very beginning, such as Dram, ZFG, Cool Kid, Darbian, Tofu, Siglemic. This video would be an hour long if I went through the list of notable players across many games who have all had decent history tracing back to this one single site, and while maybe some of you may like that, I will pass this time. A better way to paint how huge this site once was is it was like how speedrun.com has been over the past 4 to 5 years. You couldn't avoid it if you had participated in anything speedrun related. If that analogy doesn't stick with you either because you don't speedrun, it's like... let's see, how do I describe this? It's like needing water as a human, but just apply it to being a speedrunner. Literally all the cool kids to all the beginners were on it. During its peak in 2013, SRL hosted an event called SRL Seasons. Starting the season, everyone's ranking was set to 0, and players had a 3-month period to get their rating up as high as possible. I question if the 3-month period is a huge typo, because when I view the tracked race results, I see races from April to September. Let me know if anyone knows what's up with that, but continuing on. This rating was based on how many points you gained and lost from these races, which generally correlated with how well you actually did in the race. I feel like nobody really knows even to this day how these numbers are calculated, because they always feel quite random at times, but maybe some big brain programmer can dissect this for me. Anyways, they chose a dozen games to feature, with specific categories having a separate leaderboard. At the end of the season, the top 3 players on each of these boards got an award that would be displayed on their profile. Even entering 2014 and 2015, with the community modernizing more with the spawn of speedrun.com, SpeedRunsLive was still quite notable. Anything race related was done there, and no one else really had a slice of that market share. Whether it was a tournament or casual competition, everyone was there for at least one thing. Showing you screenshots over the years, you may have one main concern though. The site looks exactly the same. And trust me, it will continue to do so. Of course, if something ain't broke, you don't need to fix it, but with the speedrun niche exponentially growing and evolving year by year, something from 2012 was not going to supply all the list of needs this bubbling community was starting to crave. One thing that I suppose was nice is that by 2015, everyone was already starting to use LiveSplit to keep track of their run times, and by the end of 2014, there was already SRL integration built right into the program. You could sign in once and forget about it. After that, you could easily either make a new room, or select from the list of already made ones. Thanks to this, I never had to use a proper IRC client, and only used LiveSplit to do all my races. A lot of people over the years did complain about this integration not working very well, and the integration was supposed to initially start and end your timer, but sometimes this simply wouldn't happen. Personally, I only had this happen maybe once or twice ever, but yeah, that is quite an annoying issue. Either way though, integrating into a new essential tool like LiveSplit was great, but SRL was going to need to do a bit more than that if they wanted to keep up the interest. Even people really deep in the community may argue about this, but I would say even as early as 2016, the platform was starting to be used more by necessity rather than by actual enjoyment. The site was still using the exact same layout, the exact same ancient IRC infrastructure, and nothing new was being added to further its user base. Nonetheless, there was no other established place to do runs, quite like SRL. Your second easiest bet really was to either do a race in person, or do something in a voice call. Both of these were great options, but overall, nothing can beat a system that can automate a lot of the process for you. In 2018, they did do a second season, which this time did actually seem to take place in 3 months, but that wasn't really much. I'm not gonna lie, as someone who was both actively speedrunning and racing during this time, I had zero clue this event even happened till doing the research for this video. And looking at the site, yep, still the exact same. You would think when speedrun.com was at least constantly trying to add new features such as the users page that SRL would maybe take a hint and try to modernize too, but I guess not. Over the years they have hosted marathons on their Twitch channel, but nothing pertaining to the actual site itself. On top of that, there have also been issues over the years that have never really been properly addressed. Probably the most notable being race rooms that just never close due to somebody forgetting to end their timer. Maybe it has gotten better over the years, but I used to see it all the time when I used SRL years back. Yeah, I don't think that race of Super Mario 64 is taking 62 hours to complete. If you somehow couldn't get the big hint by now, SRL's biggest issue by far is a lack of modernization. Sure, the site doesn't need any fixing per se, but that's not really the issue. If you put the state of speedrunning in 2012 and 2022 side by side, it looks completely different. But you want to know what doesn't? Yeah. Of course, people were still going to use the site, sure, but for as long as I have been speedrunning, which at this rate is over 7 years, I've never seen SRL do anything that new and exciting. If you look at any type of successful website over the last couple decades, you'll see they've constantly innovated in one way or another. It may have taken many years, but naturally competition will always be formed. And by the time 2020 started, we finally got what would be SRL's newer and cooler cousin, Racetime.gg. Racetime basically took the core feature of SRL and made it not reek of the early 2000s. Instead of dealing with all this IRC nonsense, you can just register for an account tied to your email, and boom, you're all set. Sure, simple IRC stuff works just fine, but heck, Twitch does a good job of building on top of it, but SRL on the other hand, really doesn't do anything exciting with it. Sure, there are plenty of uses for a more bare-bones experience using commands, but nowadays, something serving a broad community such as SRL should be wrapped in a more modern interface. Race time solved this very obvious issue. Unlike SRL, where it can feel like a process to make an account, race time takes seconds. The side of their main page even says, speedrun strats can be hard, but races shouldn't have to be. Get started in less time than it takes to beat SMB any percent, which, if you somehow been under a rock, that run is quite notable for being under 5 minutes. Unlike SRL, over the past couple years, they've been implementing more and more features, such as being able to add custom emotes, allowing the option to make races not show publicly, and even a format that allows players to join teams, which is great for different race formats. The options don't even end there. You can also toggle when racers can chat, set a custom delay for when the race should actually start, and lastly, they fixed that big issue that SRL had with race rooms just sitting there for hours upon hours. By default, all race rooms will close if everyone hasn't finished after 24 hours. Of course, if you are doing some crazy marathon run, you can even toggle that further. The settings are only just a fraction of what makes this so much better. Simply joining and being in the race room is miles better on this website. Instead of having to look at some ugly IRC chat room, you get a proper website with a chat box and then all your stats on the left. There are so many nice little touches, such as displaying who created the race, displaying the progress of each runner, their current score in the category, and even other little nice touches, such as displaying pronouns next to each player's name, which you can toggle yourself. And if you think that last option is useless, you should probably step outside sometime. Like SRL, Racetime also very quickly got its own implementation into LiveSplit. I personally haven't used it since I've heard people share iffy experiences with it. I will say though, that just using the main website, I've had a flawless experience over the past couple of years. Something that I really can't say with the time that I spent with SRL. So at this point, Racetime has been around for over 2 years. So how does it hold up versus the decade-old SRL? Well, to compare how active Racetime.gg is versus SpeedRunsLive nowadays, while making this, I first opened up both pages on a Saturday and found SRL with 4 active races, and Racetime having 24. I sadly forgot to screenshot this, please trust me here. But wait, hold on. Just with those numbers, that's definitely a bit of a difference, and that's not my only example. I did this a couple weeks later on a Wednesday evening, and Racetime had 9 races, with SRL having none. I could keep saying different numbers on different days, but no matter what, Racetime has been dominating. I want you to open up both sites right now and check for yourself. I bet you money that 95+% of the time, Racetime is easily going to be having more players on it. If anything, I'm honestly questioning who is still using SRL, when there's clearly a superior product that is way easier to use. Something I took notice of as well is their monthly donation tracker at the top of the page to help keep the site running. By the end of June, they couldn't even get halfway to their $65 goal, which to be honest, isn't even that much considering how big the site has been in the past. Oh yeah, you see how the number is specifically $25.48 here? Well, that's from June. Going into July on the other hand, I saw that it was still exactly the same, even a week later. So it seems like not even the site staff at the moment even cares about the site enough to keep it updated. And if this is somehow some weird glitch or misunderstanding, please let me know. That's not the only surprisingly low number. Moving to their Twitch, it does look like they've still had some activity there with a summer 2022 event, but looking at their Twitch stats, they've only been able to peak around 70 viewers tops. Going back as far as you can on this Twitch tracker, they constantly were able to pull at least 200 viewers for streams, and many times peaked between 5 to 800 viewers during more popular events. The account has been seeing a decline in support since 2018, and has been losing followers for over half a year now, even though they just had a multi-day event in June. I can most definitely tell you the viewer drop-off isn't a result of a lack of speedrun popularity. Many speedrun organizers that have popped up over the last 5 or so years, such as Speed Gaming, pulls in 500 plus viewers no issue, and they were even doing this while SRL was still relevant. Also on Twitter, they haven't even posted this year, with their last post in October 2021 stating the website had been completely rewritten, which would allow them to push out new features. Well, if that's true, then what happened? Because maybe they thought they were Racetime.gg, but I'm not seeing any changes here. The site has become an untouched graveyard. While Racetime has propelled past SRL due to how much more it provides, I definitely think there's still plenty of room to add more. I really hope Racetime doesn't do the same as its predecessor and get too comfortable. One huge implementation I'd love to see is more revolving tournaments. For years now, a lot of communities have had to use sites such as Challenge to host tournament brackets. While the site is pretty good at what it does, it would be so much easier to have that all recorded in the same exact place the tournament races themselves are done. Let me know if you have any other ideas that could really benefit sites such as Racetime and SRL. There is probably endless potential. I'm really looking forward to how Racetime evolves going into the future. There very well could be some other competitor that springs up, but I don't think there's the need for that yet. With all the activity and updates that have been brought forth, I see Racetime being very relevant for speedruns for at least the next few years. I think it's safe to say Racetime picked up the ball that SRL ultimately fumbled, and that ball isn't going to be stolen in the very near future. So what major lessons have we learned today? Well, the obvious one should be that you can never get too comfortable. Whether you're an individual or an organization, you need to constantly be evolving and clamoring for the next big thing. SRL did its thing in the early 2010s, and then it just kinda sat there. Yeah, their name spread like wildfire in the community for many years, but that flame died out quite a few years ago now. Anyone who's been around for long enough probably knew many runners who had SRL at the end of their usernames, but try and find that nowadays. I can tell you for a fact if any new runner came onto the scene with SRL in their name in the modern day, it would be a funny joke. This isn't even just my opinion. I hear people constantly joking about this in many speedrun servers and calls that I've been a part of. I'd say the modern day equivalent to this is just adding SR for speedrun, which is definitely miles better than attaching yourself to a dying brand. Will SRL ever make a comeback? Well, from their current state, I really doubt it. Could they? I mean, yeah, anyone technically can, but it's gonna take quite a lot of effort to make that possible. Clearly the people who keep the site running nowadays don't have the drive to do that, so I really don't see that happening, unless the site is scorched and then built again from the ground up by completely new people. At that rate, it makes way more sense for everyone to focus their time on newer exciting projects such as Racetime.gg. What's great about Racetime 2 is that it's open source, so literally anyone can help contribute at any time. I will be providing links below if you want to look into it more. If you wanted to directly help with SRL right now for some reason, well, good luck with that. Let me know if anyone answers. At the end of the day, I can't force you to use one site over another, and I don't even really need to, because the numbers are already proving themselves. It's hard to fully assume who is sticking to SRL in the current day, but if I had to guess, there are two kinds of people. One, those who are simply unaware of Racetime.gg. It's still quite a new site in comparison. And two, those who do know about the site, but don't want to adopt change, since they are so used to the old thing that gets the job done. Which is fair, but isn't it nice to make those old things better and refreshing every so often? I mean, again, it is ultimately your choice. If you've used either of these websites yourself, let me know your stance on where the future of the speedrun market sits. Even if you've never done a speedrun before, I hope today I at least shed a little light towards some of the tools that have been used to further the sport over the last decade. I honestly was expecting this video to go on even longer, but maybe it's better if I kept it shorter. I don't think there's more to say if there's nothing else to be said. Thank you so much for watching.